Hi, it's Sue Stiles. Sue Stiles here with Maximize Results Consulting. And I had this idea to do a show called Hindsight's 2020. You know, everybody has a story. When we look back, there's wisdom from the story. And today I have with me Alan Tennant, the CEO of the Calgary Real Estate Board. Looking good, Alan. Tell me about your nose.
Hi, Sue. Great to be here with you. And it was interesting when you asked if I would participate in this. I kind of thought, well, geez, seriously, what do I have to bring to the table, and how would my experiences help the many people you're helping? And I thought, okay, well, first of all, don't take yourself so seriously. So, hence the clown nose.
Good for you. You know what? It's something to come over fear, just being asked and saying yes. And so, thank you for saying yes. When we chatted a little bit before, you told me about an experience you and your wife had going to New York to see Rod Stewart. And I think this is exactly why you and I are talking here today. Can you tell me about that?
Well, yeah, it was kind of a nothing story, I guess, in the sense that I was just relating how stepping out of your comfort zone can sometimes have some great outcomes. And for us, first of all, going to New York City to see Rod Stewart was kind of a step out. I mean, we're kind of Rod Stewart stalkers. I think Rona's probably seen him 30 times, me right behind her. But at any rate, to see him in Madison Square Gardens is a pretty cool thing, and to be walking around Times Square before the show and realizing we left no time to get anything to eat, and what the heck, let's get inside, and there must be a restaurant. It has to be. Madison Square Garden has to be as good as the Saddle Dome. There must be a place to eat in there. So we did, found our way to one of the nice restaurants inside, and it was packed. Managed to sweet talk the server to let us go in and have a look around to see if we could find 2 open spots. She kind of rolled her eyes and said, sure, if you think you can join somebody, go for it. So we found a high table with 2 extra chairs, and I approached the ladies and asked if they'd mind if a couple of Canadians joined them. And they kind of gave me this puzzled look, but said sure. And so we promised to stay to ourselves and not to bother them, and that was fine. And next thing you know, they're asking us questions, we're chatting with them, find out a lot about them and how they came over from New Jersey to go to the show. And ended up being a great conversation. And then at the end of the night, they were floored when the server said, no, your guests took care of your meal. So it seemed like the appropriate thing to do. So we were just being normal and doing what we typically do, which is sometimes a bit unorthodox to some people, but we weren't weirding these people out. And ended up, we had a fantastic meal, got to our seats in good time to see the show. And but the takeaway from all this, Rod was amazing, of course, but we met some people, and it's not like we kept in touch with them or turned into best friends forever, but right. It was a nice dinner conversation.
Well, how unusual, to think that you would sit with strangers, or if you'd sit with them, even to chat with them. And this kind of, this is the whole thing is, I think more and more every day, we're losing this ability just to connect with the people that are around us. We are so solitary and isolated, and we feel perhaps a need or expectation just to stay within our own little world.
That's true. And what occurred to me, even in relating this story to you, is that those 2 ladies from New Jersey have probably told the story about these Canadians that walked up, sat down, weren't that weird after all, and paid for dinner. So the lesson is, go to a show in New York City and hope a Canadian buys you supper.
That's good, Alan. Thanks for giving Canadians a good name. But my husband and I recently had the same situation. We were at a club to see some musicians, a Kirby Soul band, and the place was packed, and they couldn't afford to have empty tables. So we were sitting at a table that seated 4, and they sat a gentleman beside us, and we were a little uncomfortable at first. We're not used to doing this. And, so just polite conversation, hello. But as the night went on, we found out that he's a volunteer in a music organization, and this organization could be a big benefit to a friend I have in Vancouver. I've connected them now, and they're getting to know each other. Just, from a random communication, just from opening up to the village again in real time, in real life, not just on social media, right?
Exactly. That's fantastic. And again, I think it comes down to as real estate professionals, you always look for those opportunities to open doors and open conversations. And I think the analogy lends itself to how restaurants are set up nowadays, where in fact these long group tables do facilitate more conversation. Certainly there's more online opportunities to do things easier and to make that reservation. But once you get there, you might get the option of sitting beside people you don't really know. Everybody feels uncomfortable at the start, and then after a while, there's some great stories that come out of it.
Yes. Well, this actually is one of the things that prompted me doing this Hindsight's 2020, having a meal in Vancouver. I noticed two separate tables beginning to talk to one another, and I wondered why would two strangers start talking, and I started eavesdropping just enough to get my answer, and it turned out that the lady at one table, an older lady, was talking to this group of younger kids because somebody was deciding whether or not to go back to school, and she had had some experience with that and wanted to share her wisdom. And I just was reminded how much we can learn from other people. So even just sitting down and having a meal together, I mean, open up our mind, look, don't maybe just take out your phone and look at your phone right away, but look around and say hello can actually bring good results.
Yeah, be natural. Be natural.
Exactly. And feel like a pat on the back when you do. It makes people feel good too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So here you are, I mean, in quite a professional role, Alan, but you for years were a realtor in a small town. You took over the town. At a certain point, you decided you would apply or you were asked to be a leader for the Calgary Real Estate Board. You passed along your business to your children who are realtors in your town, and you stepped up to manage. Calgary has a population of about 1.3 million. We've got about 5,600 realtors, or 55. I don't know where the numbers are at. But here you are, the leader, looking over all of the agents in our city. Go ahead.
Well, one step at a time. I think that's the key. I had a fantastic real estate business, 26 years a realtor, loved every second of it, was not looking for an exit, clearly committed to the long term, whatever that was. And our oldest daughter, Michelle, had become a realtor a few years before and loved working with Michelle. And eventually her husband, Matt, joined the team. The team was growing and business was good, life was good. So, but for me, I think it was just a real concern, maybe, I suppose, about where our real estate board was heading, where our industry was going, and soon realized maybe I had some talents and skills that I hadn't ever paid attention to, that by taking some education and some training, I was able to develop to the point that I became, sorry about the phone ringing in the background here. This is real.
It is a natural work day, isn't it? I guess you actually do work in your office there, Alan.
Well, and I do shock people from time to time when I pick up the phone and actually answer it. They expect everything to go to voicemail. But at any rate, I guess the transition for me away from being a realtor and to serving realtors was somewhat natural, but it was very unnerving. Going from an environment where I kind of had a pretty good handle on what my day-to-day world looked like. Although, of course, the life of a realtor, the day of a realtor is always different. They're like snowflakes. But I found myself realizing that maybe there was a different calling for some of the skills I developed and attitudes that I brought to the table. And going on 8 years in this role, I'm still excited to come into work every day.
Wow, so good to hear. And tell me again about your dad.
Well, Dad passed away a year ago in May, so gone through now 2 Father's Days without him, which is kind of weird. But at any rate, when going back about 3 years now, 3-4 years, Dad was 78 and decided to get his real estate license. He'd sold his chain of weeklies, which is something he'd done before, but this time he he sold them, and the sort of the period of time where he stayed on and as the publisher had come to an end, and he was looking for a new challenge. And he said to me that he always wished he'd gotten into real estate. He honestly was a closet realtor all these years, even many years ago when I worked with him at the Weeklies, based in Airdrie. I knew Dad really had a thing about negotiating deals and loved the real estate world. So he decided to achieve that goal and set his mind to at 78 becoming a realtor, and was very excited, loved every minute of it. I joked a couple of times with him and with others that I didn't know where I went wrong, that somehow I would make this career look appealing to a 78-year-old man. But apparently he didn't just take my word for it. There was a lot of people in Cochrane, where he was based, that really rooted for him and mentored him, and were extremely welcoming. And I'll always be grateful for that. I know what it meant to Dad, but his only regret was something he expressed to me a couple of times, was that he waited too long. And he loved his career in journalism, but he would have really loved being a realtor as well, and wished he'd started at a younger age.
How many of us have that secret kind of idea or that secret passion that we have inside? We think, if something ever happened, maybe I'd go for my dream. But, we're so comfortable that we don't. But good for him at 78. You don't hear that story very often.
Well, yeah, there's a real lesson there. Sorry to cut you off, but I can't hesitate to jump in and say you have to listen to that. The idea that he loved what he was doing, but might have loved this more. And if he had started it at a younger age or at a different place in life, it could have been another very successful chapter in his life. In the end, it maybe really wasn't. He stayed a realtor for 2 years, and didn't set any sales records. He had some people that really enjoyed working with him, but I think his takeaway from all of this is maybe it is a younger person's game in terms of starting a business and starting a book of business. It's not something you do on a whim later in life. It's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
No, but he did not pass away leaving anything undone.
That's true.
I always say it's never too late to start something new. And I know there's a famous quote that it's never too late to be what you might have been. The first time I read Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist, a very well-known older book, I read the whole story. It was a wonderful story, but it was the last page after the story had ended that hit me. Because I've always liked to write. I've always been a writer of one sort or another, but I had been feeling like I was getting so old. I was coming up to 50. Oh my gosh. When my grandparents were 50, I really viewed them as being quite old. And Paulo didn't start writing until he was, I can't remember the age. Let's say it's 30 or 40, but he had started later. And, the last page after the whole story was done was, do it. It's never too late to begin if you've got something in your heart. Well, there's a lot of real estate agents that have something in their heart to be successful in real estate, to support their family, to make their dreams come true. And let's just, at your level and with all the realtors that you see, if you could just take a second and tell me what, Alan, is the best thing that realtors can do to get business. It's a hard business from somebody who has seen so much. What would you say to that?
Well, I think people have to maximize their strengths. So think hard about what you're great at. I mean, there's a lot of products you can buy and systems you can throw a great deal of money at to generate online leads. Let's just take that as an example. Mm-hmm. Well, if that's not your style, don't do it. If you're really gifted in personal settings, in conversational settings, in networking, if your family dynamic is such that you've got kids that are involved in a bunch of activities, and that's generating potential business in the type of business you're working in or aspiring to work in, that's where you need to focus. So online leads might be the last thing you need in that environment. So really have an honest conversation with yourself and maybe with others that can be honest and direct with you, and really get a handle by itemizing, cataloging it, your strengths and your weaknesses, and look at your weaknesses as areas you can improve upon. But if your strengths are very clear and they supplement the business you dream of, then focus on how you augment those strengths and make them even more appealing and more of your go-to value proposition to real estate consumers.
So if part of the reason for being a realtor is meeting new people every day and helping people, don't be afraid to keep building on that and keep meeting people and helping people and building professional relationships to help build your business.
Exactly. Give yourself an opportunity to succeed by putting yourself in a comfortable place. So, responding to online leads works for certain people. And that's just one example. There's so many different examples. And that's what I loved about real estate, was that there are so many different ways to find your niche and to find what you're good at. And some people spend their whole career and never really get there. They're always leaping from thing to thing. But I think it's because they need to almost do what big companies do, what all organizations do, what CREB does. You go away and have a strategic planning retreat. Well, what that's really about is getting out of your way and focusing on what you're good at and what you're not good at. And so in a group dynamic around an organization like CREB or larger organizations is so important, but doing it on your own. And I would do that. I would find some quiet time and sit and write my business plan. Long before business plans were a cool thing to do, before I probably knew to call it that, I just called it my plan. And I would lay out my goals, but I would sit and think hard about what am I good at, and what do I like doing, and what do people think I'm good at, and does it all match up? So that really strong, honest assessment of where those strengths and weaknesses lie, and then building from the strengths is a natural place to go. So, we've all studied and heard of people that emphasize, planning your life around doing what you really enjoy doing, and eventually your fun activity might be your career. It might be how you do your how you manage your lifestyle. So yeah, exactly. So, I think that's the thing about real estate is it's not a cookie cutter career. There's all kinds of different ways to be successful. And I think those that are very successful in this business aren't necessarily making the most money, but they're the happiest people. They're contributing the most to society, and they're contributing the most to their profession. And their idea of giving back is, a quantum leap beyond what other people are even capable of doing. But that's their specialty.
Well, I think I totally agree with that. And of course, I teach a course at CREB for brand new realtors when they come in. So you're a realtor. Now what do I do? And I often ask if they've ever done a business plan. And I would say maybe 5% of the class usually puts their hand up. But across industry, if you would just start there, and then of course the problem is a lot of people don't, and then they never find their momentum. And that kind of leads me into the next question I was going to ask you. I mean, you see when people hand in their licenses, you see when they give up and decide that this just isn't working for them. What would you say the reasons are, the top reasons are for realtors not making it in the business?
That's a great question, and shame on us for not having the data. I think that's the kind of question we should courageously start asking realtors as they're leaving, and not rely on a survey, but poke around a bit and find out more. We don't do exit interviews with people that leave the business,
right?
Which is kind of too bad. And one of the ironic backstories to my father's real estate experience is that it was me that asked him to hang it up. At 80 years old, health starting to fail. The guy was going to kidney dialysis 3 times a week, sitting in a chair for 4 or 5 hours, and then going out and meeting clients. I mean, it was crazy. But I finally said, Dad, I think it's time to hang it up. But that's a pretty rare conversation in our space. But and we love talking about people that died with their boots on. But I think that's a mistake. I think we should die with our flip-flops on. We should die with our feet in the sand. We should be doing that crazy thing that we love doing, and that's the way to go out. So if we're doing our career correctly, we can create that possibility for us. So the business itself is a punishing business. It really is. I think that's why I have such unyielding love and respect for realtors. It's hard to be great at this and to be great at it for a long time, but it's not about having a job in real estate or even having a career in real estate. It's about having a business in real estate, and businesses evolve. All businesses do. Today's CREB looks nothing like it did 5 or 10 years ago. And it's the same for realtors that are adapting to what's going on around them. So again, you need to have your eyes wide open, your ears wide open, and being able to perceive change and then adapting and reinventing yourself on a regular basis.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because it's very easy to say, of course, changes come, we need to adapt, we need to evolve. You've become a real change agent for the Calgary Real Estate Board. One that we talked about looks like it's going to, you're going to work yourself out of a job, which is probably counterproductive for you as an individual. But talk just a little bit about that as you're looking now forward to changing the way things are done and what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The courageous thing about evolution is being able to lay out a plan that doesn't include you. And I did that a little bit with my real estate team, where I felt like Michelle and Matt would eventually be capable of running things, and with or without me, perhaps. So, but the same thing with the way organized real estate was concerning me over 8 years ago, when I looked around and thought, have I got something to offer? They're looking for somebody to replace Ron Esch. Am I the type of person that might take the organization in a different direction and perhaps help make it more relevant to realtors and help realtors do more business and do it more easily? So, but eventually along the way, it became pretty apparent to me that we've got some duplication and waste in our structure in Alberta that should change, and how it might change is something that might profoundly change how CREB exists, if it even continues to exist in many years or in many months, possibly, who knows. But by being able to work with a board of directors that shares that courage and the ability to see the big picture has been one of the most fulfilling things I've experienced in this role. And the fact that we're able to have these hard conversations internally and start to have them provincially, which is not easy, because there's not necessarily always a market for a tough, courageous conversation. It's human nature. Look, my world's not broken. Why are you coming around here freaking me out? Well, that's how change evolves, is by being a little fearless about going into the tricky parts of our world, or the mucky corners that need to be identified and the light shone on them, and everybody sort of come back and say, wait, we can do better, and it's time.
And people don't want to look at that, especially if they're comfortable in a job that gives them an income. But one of the things that really impacted me that you said when we were chatting before was something like, don't wait to be invited to give your opinion, to give your wisdom, to give your knowledge. Go ahead and make an impact now. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you're feeling in this then?
Absolutely. I've written a couple of discussion papers on the future state of organized real estate in Alberta. I've put my thoughts on paper and challenged others to do the same. In my way of thinking, maybe it helps having a father who was a journalist his whole life, but putting ideas in writing and allowing others to beat them up is how, encouraging others, never mind allowing them, to beat up the ideas and to somehow see if there's a better idea in the midst of all that it's just the way I'm wired. So, to have an opportunity to present a new path forward that may or may not include me personally is actually very exciting. And I think it's infectious too, by the way.
Yeah.
I have a leadership team around me. I'm thinking of our board of directors and also the senior leaders within CREB that are very courageous when it comes to these types of conversations. And there's all kinds of other backstories I can share with you or anybody that ever wants to talk about them in terms of how that manifests itself. So real true growth comes from being able to reach out and try something new and go into uncharted areas, go into your uncomfort zone. And my advice is it's not that scary, and it's actually where the really cool things start to happen.
And because all of your experiences haven't been easy and they haven't been perfect either. I know we brushed over a little bit, but you were a broker owner for a while. You experienced even that aspect of the real estate world, and it wasn't the greatest, right?
Well, I had a hell of a write-off. Well, it was interesting. I mean, it was a very valuable experience, learning about the business, learning about what I was good at, as a good example. And many people have that gravitational pull in their career where you achieve certain things and people think, oh, good, you should run this, or you should own the office, or you should be the broker. And so I kind of went through that, and I agreed. I thought, yeah, hell yeah, I could do that. I should do that. And what was interesting is, for me, it was it was an eye-opening learning experience, and it was expensive, by the way. It did not come cheaply, but I feel like I actually got my PhD in real estate management on the street and from the School of Hard Knocks. So, dealing with things that you don't necessarily see in the business helped me understand the parts of the business I really loved and that I really wanted to focus on. So when we created our team many years later, one of the things that we focused on was quality of life and having work-life balance. And which to us meant not necessarily being 24/7 Pop-Tart realtors that were, every time something happened, running out the door to go help somebody. So we actually came up with something, and I'll just share this because it was so simple and silly, but we called it the showing phone. So, in those days, Greb, you would put your phone number in the system, and the calls, nowadays the text would go there for showings or through the showing tool, nowadays Showing Time. But we went out and got a separate phone. So that was the phone, and we took turns carrying that phone around. So three of us were generating a lot of business, and but by taking turns, we all had some really good quality downtime, and I think our quality of work shot up because of it.
That's such a great idea and a great mindset. How many people have done things or experienced things that did not go well, or they didn't get rich from, or they lost money in, but I mean, what you learned and can bring forward even in your role and how you advise other people, you can't even buy that education. It's just something you've experienced and, it takes you where you're at now. So here you are now. I mean, you've been, did you say 8 years, the CEO of the Calgary Real Estate Board? Mm-hmm. What, when you look forward for the next 20 years, long-term forward, what's important to you? What is really important in life, and how do you feel about it?
Well, that's a great question. So, and the first thing is I have kind of a plan for how much longer I want to work. I just celebrated a birthday, and I turned, I call it 40-21. Because
congratulations.
I've still got that realtor gene, and it's all in how you bundle things or package them or stage them. So I turned 61, and I'm planning to work till I'm probably 70-ish. I don't think I'll be getting my stockbroker's license at 78, following my father's lead, but who knows? Maybe I will. But I don't see myself in this role for many, many more years. I really don't. We'll see what the short term holds. But the school of thought around being a CEO is that the most effective of us stay in the role for a more limited amount of time. So you go hard for 7, 8, 10 years, and then you groom somebody to replace you, or create a roster of people that could which is my goal, to replace myself and make it tough for the board of directors to go out and find another candidate beyond those few people to replace me. So that's a background job and responsibility that I have. But looking ahead, I want to explore jobs and challenges, careers, projects that really get my light on. And I think the real estate business is a fantastic business, but it's not finished its metamorphosis. And I think there's more change coming that does seem kind of scary. And I think there needs to be, I think, more cheerleading for the hard work that day in and day out realtors do for their clients and for the business. And the less apologizing we do for that, the better. And if my remaining time at Krebs and maybe in the next role, whatever that happens to be, if there is one in the real estate space, I will be dedicating myself to being that cheerleader.
Wow. See how, I mean, as I'm listening to you, you can just see how, everyone starts off niche market and maybe smaller, but as we get older, our vision seems to grow larger. I'm hearing from you in hindsight, be brave. I'm hearing, to take the risks, to do what's on your mind, to become a change agent, to be a leader and open your arms up to a community, even if it means that you might misplace yourself. You don't seem to have any fear because you're doing something for the greater good. And so I guess you trust in that process, or you've learned to trust that things will work out for you.
Absolutely. And I think it's the same in any walk of life, in any career. If you're really working hard and contributing and adding value, you won't be expendable. There will always be a role for that type of person. And yes, there's always, stories and tales of people that were shafted and somehow they, were let go or had to move into another role someplace else. But the reality is that opened another door. And if you're around long enough, you start to see those things play out, and there's a higher calling for those individuals. So yeah, I'm very confident in what the future holds for me and how I can find something that does get my light on. That's the bottom line.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. I hope that prompts somebody else's light to come on, a remembrance, something they were maybe afraid of doing. And if you're in real estate, I know, Alan, you have a very good reputation of being somebody who is not afraid to talk to the members and listens to not only your staff, your board, your directors, but the people who are around in the industry. So I appreciate this chat today. Was there anything else that you wanted to add or that I missed that you were thinking of?
You know what, Sue, there's so many things. That's the fantastic thing about chatting with you, which is a big part of my answer. Why would I do this? And why would I look forward to doing this with you? But it always gets me thinking, and if we're aware of ourselves and aware of our role, and always curious about how we can do more. I think that's what brings out the best in us. So I appreciate all that you do in provoking excellence in people, and I thank you for doing that with me. And I'll just have a little sip in your honor, Sue. Thank you.
I like that. That is on my list now. Thank you very much, Alan. Love your hindsight. And that's a wrap for today. I hope you enjoyed that and you'll come back and listen to the other interviews that I have for your benefit. Thanks very much, Alan. Take care.
My pleasure.